Hello, hello, hello.
And welcome to the Hildebrand Law Firm topic for today.
I'm Kirsten Hildebrand.
And I'm Matt Kaplan.
And today we're going to talk about the third biggest cost that happens at the end of your life. Now, there are medical costs. We're not talking about that. We're talking about the legal costs associated with the off-ramp so that now you are on to bigger and better things when you leave this world with all of its irritations.
And at this point in our story, you have gotten off the off-ramp, you've gotten to the exit, and you have gotten the exit of heaven, and you are there. How much does that cost? I mean, some people say, well, I got off the road. I don't really care how much it costs. That's not true. A lot of people do care what they're leaving to their loved ones, and they care about the cost and the fight that's associated with it after they leave. And so the final biggest cost that you have, probate. We've talked about probate in a few other videos before, but probate, that tends to be one of the bigger costs that end up following someone into their death.
In fact, AARP did a research study, and what they found was that the average cost of probate in the United States is anywhere from 5 to 20% of the gross value of your estate. And the reason that they went off of the gross is because that's what states like to do when they're taxing you. There are also plenty of states, such as Washington and California, that have state estate taxes or state death taxes, as they're sometimes referred to. Wisconsin does not have a state death tax, but it does have an administrative fee, and that administrative fee, although it sounds nicer, it basically functions the same way. And it is a cost that needs to be factored in, as well as all of the other costs of probate. So if you want to do a little experiment, figure out what your gross probate is. And so what that means is don't take out your mortgage. If your house is worth $300,000 and you have a $200,000 mortgage, your probate is a $300,000 probate.
Wow.
Because that's the way the court looks at it. And so sometimes you can even have what's called a deficit estate where money is still owed because of the way the math is done.
And now, Kirsten, could you give us a quick rundown? Let's say an estate of $500,000. So 5 to 20%, let's say conservatively 10%. So a $50,000 probate. Where are all those costs actually coming from?
What in the world is going on with all of that? Yes. And so let's assume that there is someone who is going to be in the position of personal representative. So that person is going to need to be paid for all of their efforts. And their efforts will include things like selling the house, getting rid of everything in the house. So you have to call somebody or do it yourself, but either way, somebody is going to need to be paid to do all of that. Then there are the issues associated with valuing all of those assets before they're given away. So that means hiring somebody who is going to come in and do a valuation. The personal representative has to oversee how the distribution is going after an inventory is done first. So first there's got to be an inventory that captures every single thing that has a value to it. And then we have to talk about the car and selling the car. And then you have to talk about the house and selling the house and what those costs are. Now, some of those are going to happen regardless of if you're in probate or not, but there's still a cost. And then you have to open up a case, you have to publish. Publication costs probably a couple $100. Then you have to notify everyone. All of these are expenses that are incurred by the attorney, or if you want to learn probate law, you can. But believe me, we have had plenty of people come in here and say, goodness gracious, I don't even care anymore. I just want to hire an attorney to help us through this probate process. Why is that? Because we go to law school for that. Even though the court is accessible to people, it is complicated and it is very easy to make an error. In fact, we had somebody in just the other day who has a law degree but works in a completely different area of the law. And he tried to take out a federal tax ID number, which is something that you have to do for every estate. and he made a mistake just in taking out a federal tax ID number. He put the wrong date in, and it jammed everything up, and now it's going to take twice as long to undo that mistake. So even when people think they can do something simple, it's not as simple as it looks. It's definitely one of those things where it's nice to have somebody who does this every single day do it for you, so that then those mistakes and those errors are not going to cost more in legal fees. So besides that, then there's obviously the court hearings, there's the appraisals that need to happen, there's the distributions, there's the legal fees. Did I say legal fees already? Legal fees is a lot of what that is in order to move things forward. And it does become a necessary expense. It is something that can be deducted against any income that's earned in the process of the administration, but it's still something that will be ultimately coming out of the different shares. So there's just a lot of costs associated with it, and most people who I do this calculation with come to the understanding that it is really a great idea to not have to incur those costs in probate, and instead have those things be cut way down by having a trust put in place.
And another thing is like what you just described was an average simple probate.
Yes.
But everybody's probate is not average or simple. Everybody has their own issues. If there's kids involved, you're hiring attorneys to represent the kids' interests. Cha-ching, cha-ching. If there's someone disabled, you're hiring an attorney to represent their interest. Money racks up. One of my favorite expenses that I've heard on a probate is someone had to hire a handwriting expert because they thought that a document was forged from their deceased father, to the tune of $5,000 for a handwriting expert.
Yes.
We're on the wrong line of work, Kirsten.
Right.
We should just imagine that. It's the same. You can do it cash, check.
Yeah, $5,000, please.
I'll take $5,000, please. So but all of that comes out of the gross estate.
Yes.
And we didn't even mention contested probates.
Right.
So that's all simple, non-contested probates, 5 to 20% of your estate. What are you looking at if your probate is contested?
I mean, the sky's the limit. It is an incredible expense, and it ends up really also being an emotional burden. It's very stressful, and it's exactly the opposite of what you should be going through when somebody passes away.
Yeah.
Right? Because when somebody passes away, you should be thinking about, how can I properly mourn this person? How can I enjoy who this person is in my life now that they are gone? And what I mean by that is, I just heard somebody recently say that when somebody passes away, your relationship with them doesn't end, it just changes.
Mm.
And so for those of you who have had a rough parent, it's kind of nice, because then you can just stop having the roughness happen, and you can go and just remember all of the wonderful things. And I think almost every parent has some wonderful parts to them, and focus on those and enjoy the gifts that were given in that regard, whether they were perhaps a good provider and maybe that was about it, but hey, at least they were a good provider. You didn't starve when you were growing up as a child. So in other words, there's ways to go back and just be thankful for the person who they were in your life. All of that gets gummed up when you are looking at the logistics and the attention and the systemization that is occurring in your life, and when you have to go through a probate action.
And I think too, for contested probate especially, it seems like the intent for the people who are contesting it is not to get more money. It seems like most of the time the intent is out of spitefulness.
Oh yeah, it's completely retribution.
I'm going to fight tooth and nail so that you get nothing.
Yes.
I don't care what I get. I don't want you to get anything.
Yes, and this is absolutely the case. We have had several situations like that where I've heard, I don't care about the money. All I care about is that my sibling doesn't get a dime of this. And so that's how these things take on a life of their own. And boy, if the parents are looking down from heaven, for example, and they're seeing these kids having their last great battle, it's like Armageddon. And I'm sure they are quite displeased. But that is avoidable if you put out clear, excellent instructions, especially within a trust context that doesn't allow for this access to the court that is going to be extremely expensive. Yes, of course, anybody can file a lawsuit at any time, but when you have trust in place, it does reduce the chance that somebody is going to go in that direction. So yes, probate is definitely that third and final cost, which again, you can choose to just let that roll and let that happen, or you can choose to set things up so that you are able to eliminate a lot of those expenses for your loved ones. Well, thank you so much for joining us today, because we are here to protect your today and your tomorrow, and we will join you next time.